Welcome back to Switch to Linux and another edition of DistroWars. Well, we beat Arch to death for a whole lot, and so we wanted to go back over into other families. And today we are going to have a look at Solus running the flagship Budgie and Ubuntu Budgie community build, or spin, I guess it would be called. And both of these are good distributions. Budgie is one of my favorite desktop environments, and we're going to have a look at these, and we're going to go more under the hood today rather than staying on more surface things, because on the surface, these are basically going to be the same, just themed a little bit differently. But when we actually get under the hood, then we're actually going to see some things that are a little bit different, and we might actually walk out of this with a potentially declared winner, but we'll have to see what happens. So we're going to start by having a look at their websites like we usually do. So over at Solus, which is getsol.us, and Solus here, they have developed the Budgie Desktop, but if you actually head on over to the downloads, they have a Budgie, they have a GNOME, a Plasma, and a Mate as well. So they actually do have other options, but their flagship and the desktop environment that they built is the Budgie, and that's what we are going to look like. Now, this is not developed on, it's not a fork of any of the previous Linux builds, so it's not like a version of Debian like Ubuntu is. This is actually its own thing. All of the software is directly curated. They have their own package manager called EO Package, and it basically gives you a good, clean system that doesn't have a lot of junkware in the repositories. Everything in there is pretty much going to work for you. They have some extra third-party repositories, and they do support Snap and Flatpak, although there is a little caveat to that we are going to get to when we get into it. Ubuntu Budgie, of course, is the Budgie desktop environment build of the popular Ubuntu. So this is going to basically be Ubuntu themed with a custom-themed Budgie desktop environment. It's going to have all of the power and the tools of Ubuntu, so all of your Debian management, all of your Debian tutorials are going to solve any of these issues that you come up with. And it's going to be a little bit more heavier on Snap out of the box than Solus is going to be. So we'll kind of have a look at that. That could be a good thing. That could be a bad thing, depending on your individual preference. But what we want to do is, let's see, if you head on over to the downloads, I think we only have 64-bit versions, but you can go 2004, you can go 1804. You can do an 1804 32-bit. So if you do need a 32-bit, they do have the 1804 version for that. And I'm guessing that this guy here is in development. Excuse me. Is in development and testing only, the 2010 edition, because that is the one that is currently in development. Can, of course, tip them if you're going to use it as your primary desktop or your primary operating system. I do support supporting your developers, so definitely do that. But anyway, let's go ahead and jump on over and have a look at these guys. We are going to start by having a look at Solus. All right, so here we are onto the login screen. You can come over here and type in your password, and I believe they're really only giving us, I don't think they have any other means of logging in here. So in theory, Solus should, at least Budgie should come with GNOME as well. They're not giving us the options to log into GNOME because apparently they don't like it, but there's probably ways to fix that. But you go ahead and log on in here, and we get to Budgie. That's just fine because Budgie's what we wanted. What we see here is I absolutely love the theming that they've given us. It is material design, which has never been my forte, but still, it is very nice. I like the notification looks, just everything out of the box. I did not change any of the theming or things like that. I did install a few packages to test some things. But let's have a quick walk through our basic settings if you're unfamiliar with Budgie. Now, you do have the option to turn on or turn off desktop options. This is actually the GNOME Software Center, I believe. And there's basically two settings panels in Budgie, and that's one of the downsides of the desktop itself. We have the settings, which we just saw, and the desktop settings. The desktop settings will allow you to do things like turn on desktop desktop icons if you want desktop icons. I generally prefer those, and I love the option to turn those on if you want, but I appreciate that there's people who do not like those. Over here, these are your Raven menus, so I like taking the power strip and turning it on to into the Raven menu itself rather than having it down here in the system tray. But those are nice options. One of the things I like about it is it kind of gives us this slide out notification and applet panel, kind of like the thing that we get inside a Mac. So if you're playing some music or whatever, you can go ahead and drop that in down here, and all that's going to appear right over here in the applet section, and notifications will appear over here as well. Budgie does have its own built-in updating system, so the Software Center will actually control updates as well. I already ran updates. Now let's go ahead and talk about the Software Center, because this is really going to be where we bridge out and go under the hood. We're not going to bother looking at the software installed and whatnot. But over here, you can come in and you can select your various categories. And then there are a lot of applications. One thing that we notice is that there's a whole lot of things without icons that should. Like Sigil, you should have the icon. Bookworm should have the icon. A lot of these things should have their icons, and they really don't. Kind of giving it like Ubuntu kind of did this when they switched over. The snaps all have their icons, but the apt packages, the icons were not there. I believe that has been fixed in the latest edition, but we'll have a look at that because we will be looking at Ubuntu, and it is the latest updates are installed. It will check for system updates automatically. We can get a list of everything installed. Now we do have third party as well. These are coming in from a variety of different ways. Mostly, I believe these are just basically like going in and doing like a wget install script. But we can do Android Studio, we can do Flash if you want to for some reason. We have a few different versions of Google Chrome, Google Earth, various Google applications. We got MoneyDance, Skype, Spotify, TeamViewer. So a lot of these types of third parties. Now, what you don't see inside of here is snaps or Flatpaks. We actually can use those, but the problem with them is that there is no GUI installer. And since everything in Solus is curated in the packages, the challenge that we have now is I cannot even install GNOME software and use GNOME software installing the Snap and the Flatpak plugins, and just use GNOME software as a means to install snaps or Flatpaks in the GUI. I do not know of any way to manage those in the GUI. Now, since Snap is available, now Snap is set up, but there's no snaps installed. My guess is if we installed the Snap store, we would have a GUI for running snaps. And if I can remember how to install a snap, I will do that. Let's give that a try. I think it's just snap install, is it not? I believe that is the case. Let's see if the Snap Store is available. So it is actually downloading Snapd and getting the Snap Store. So in theory, we will be able to install snaps through a GUI utilizing the Snap Store. Now, if you wanted to do Flatpaks, I do not know of any way that we can do that. Flatpak is installed by default, but nothing is configured. So I went ahead and configured the Flatpak repository, and I installed some Flatpaks. I might have removed them since then. Actually, I don't think I did. I think it was Kdenlive, which I think is still on here. So yeah, I installed Kdenlive. I believe that is from a Flatpak. So we are actually able to probably get this. We'll verify that when that's done doing its thing. But as far as other GUI management of snaps or Flatpaks, you do not have it. And a lot of the reason here, and somebody had mentioned prior to starting the video here, there's some politics into what goes inside of the Solus's custom repositories. And that means that there's some things like there's no reason to hold GNOME Software Center out. It's not my favorite software center, but you know what? At least it works. And I can use it on almost any distribution. So that gives Solus kind of a negative side, that you have to learn how to do and interact with these things in the terminal if you're going to be using Solus. And the fact that they do have a limited amount of curated software means you might run into a problem running Solus where you are going to come up with a package that you need and you cannot find it. Let's see if we can find the Snap Store. So in theory now, if this works, we should have a GUI for installing snaps now. So hey, look at that. It is glorious. So let's go and look for, once again, Kdenlive. see if it works. So Kden Live, and you can see that this is coming from the Snap store. So if you do want snaps and snaps are going to be sufficient for you, you're going to have to manually install the Snap store. It's very easy. Just snap install snap-store in the terminal, and now you have a GUI means to manage your snaps. Flatpak, unfortunately, there is not any equivalent. Oops, I forgot to type in list. So here it's giving me a list, and again, I installed Kden Live, and the rest of these are things that were required for Kden Live. Again, no other means to install Flatpaks that I was able to find. So that in and of itself gives Solus a little bit of a downside. Positives, it installs easy, it's well curated, everything in the Software Center is going to work. We do have some excellent connections to third-party software, and the theming is absolutely top-notch. Downside is some packages are going to be missing, and they've done a little bit of politicking to keep some packages out that I don't see a reason why they shouldn't be available at least, especially since Budgie requires GNOME to run. And ultimately, that does leave a little bit of a bad taste for Solus in light of this. Let's go ahead and have a look at what Ubuntu Budgie is going to look like. Same desktop environment, just a different distribution. So we'll have a look at that one next. All right, so here we are on the Ubuntu Budgie login screen. So basically the same login screen, and let's go ahead and get logged in there. I did not mention earlier, but Solus will not allow you to create your computer with a weak password, which is come on, man, give me the choice. You know, I might be building a test machine and I don't want a complicated password. So I did have to go in there in the terminal and change the password to my usual super secure password. That's definitely not 123. All right, so anyway, here we are logged in with this one here, classic to Ubuntu. We have our panel and such as at the top of the screen rather than the bottom. They have given us a different default to the menu, so this one's a little bit closer to what we had inside of Solus. They give us this one by default, which I'm not a huge fan of, and I wish that they would have given some theming to this to sort of match the rest of the transparency type theming that they did. This provides a little bit of inconsistency to it. We do actually have software installer, just a little dock down here, which works quite nice. And here is our Raven menu. Again, it's just beautiful. Pull out the Raven menu and horrible ugly. So the theming on this one has a lot to be desired, I have to say. Here's our Budgie desktop settings. You can, of course, turn on or turn off your various things. There you go. That's what I was trying to do in the other one. So there is the icons. I think you might also need to change the widget one and a few other ones there that you had. I just couldn't remember exactly where we had to change everything around inside of the theming, and we're not really looking at the theming anyway, so I'm not all that concerned. But once again, here we can see turning on our icons, Raven menus, window panels, so all the different things that you want to do. I think I have a whole video on just controlling the Budgie desktop. That's really why I did not want to get into it as much. Now, as far as software management, because Ubuntu is based on Debian, all of the powers of Debian, where we have apt, we have in Ubuntu, we have our PPAs. We have a lot of means to manage software. Now, here we actually have the Software Center already configured and working, and this should be configured as well with apps. So I'm going to do Kden Live again as my test, which should give me two options. So this Kden Live down here, which you can see is the icon. This is the one from the Ubuntu repositories. This one here is going to be your snap package. You can actually choose if you have a choice there. Up here, you'll notice that there's some changes here. We can go with the latest stable, latest candidate, latest beta, latest edge. So you have options for which one you are installing from that perspective. It does appear as though they probably have fixed many of the icon issues that there were. So we did actually see some icon issues in some of these, but let's look at how do I spell Clementine? There you go. So here we go. So here is, I believe, the snap package one. So it looks like they did actually fix the repository icon issue. So I'm very pleased to see that that has now been fixed. Now, as far as under the hood, when we look at our management under the hood here, we actually have the ability to use apt, of course, which I didn't get into using EO package with Solus. EO package and apt are very similar, except it behaves a little bit like DNF, where you don't have to do a separate update. When you go to do the install, it's always going to fetch the latest copies of everything. So you don't need to run the update separately. But here you can do apt. We also, though, have snap, and they actually do have some snaps installed by default. We have the Ubuntu Budgie welcome screen is a snap. We have snapd, and we have the core. So those are there as well. Flatpak is not installed by default, so you can install Flatpak if you want to. So Ubuntu, of course, being the main purveyors of the snap packages, it does configure everything to work with snap packages. You are also going to find a lot more software available to you. There you go. Sure, let's update now. Why not? You are going to find a lot more software available to you because apt contains pretty much every piece of software there is. If it's not there, you can probably find a deb file. You can find a PPA. You can find a lot of other means to install software. So if you need software, particularly less common, less popular pieces of software, the Ubuntu Budgie of these two is definitely going to be your better bet. If you need to work with Flatpaks, either one is going to be better for you. However, being is that you can install GNOME Software Center on Ubuntu, you can install the Flatpak plugin for the for the GNOME Software Center, and that will give you a GUI to install Flatpaks. So you have more options for GUI management of the tools on the Ubuntu version. So most of the other things are going to be pretty much the same. Again, the theming on Solus is infinitely better than the theming on Ubuntu, but nevertheless, Ubuntu does carry with it better software management, better GUI tools, and just some better systems, better understanding where things might happen to be at. So overall, between these two, leading us to a final conclusion, I'm actually going to have to say that Ubuntu Budgie is going to be the overall better bet. While the theming is better in Solus, theming is easy to change, and you can actually retheme this to look pretty much exactly like Solus if you wanted to, and you're going to have the power of apt. You're going to have the GUI tools for both snap packs. I'm going to keep doing that, both Snapcraft and for Flatpaks. You're going to have both of those options. And I think that GUI tools is generally better unless you're working in pure server situations. But again, if you're used to the terminal and you just want a better, cleaner experience and you are under the camp that Ubuntu is simply the devil, Solus might be your better bet, and you're going to be doing a lot of stuff in the terminal anyway. And if most of your software is snaps or Flatpaks, neither one's going to make the difference if you are accustomed to the terminal. But for the new users out there wanting to explore with Budgie, Solus does give you the better Budgie experience, but Ubuntu Budgie does a better operating system experience. So if you're new to Linux, wanting to check out this desktop environment between these two distributions, I'd probably steer you towards Ubuntu Budgie before I'd steer you towards Solus. You're going to have more packages. They're not holding back packages seemingly arbitrary. They do have more GUI tools and more options available. So that is my take on these ones. Let me know your take in the comments down below. Thank you for watching this video from Switched to Linux. This channel would not be possible without the backing of the program supporters scrolling on the screen now. You can be a supporter at Patreon at patreon.com/TOMM or at thinklifemedia.com. I also want to thank the open source community who creates such excellent software that makes producing this show possible. Please remember to support your software communities. Thank you, and I hope that you enjoy switching to Linux.